This week we lay in Parshas Lech Lecha. And in this Parsha, our story begins. Bereshis Noach is the beginning of the world. Avraham Avinu was the first Jew. And in this Parsha, our story begins. And it begins with Lech Lecha. Asor Nisyonis, Nisnas Avraham Avinu v'yamad bekulam. He was tested 10 times, and he passed the test. So towards the second part of today's Shiur, we will speak about Lech Lecha. But at the end of this week's Parsha, one of the 10 Nisyonis of Avraham Avinu was Mitzvos Milah, and usually in Parshas Lech Lecha, the sugya we discuss is always associated with Mitzvos Milah. And today we discuss a topic which is about Milah, but not only about Mitzvos Milah. And that is the topic of Chazaka b'mitzvos. When a person was Zoicha in a mitzvah once, twice, 3 times, how exactly one achieves the status of a Chazaka we will mention towards the end of this year, but the concept of Chazaka b'mitzvos. If a person has a Chazaka, he's Zoilachos in Torah, he's Zoilachos in Bereshis, he does this, he does that, does he have an argument to say, this is mine and you cannot give it to anyone else? So let's start with the sugya of Mitzvos Milah. The Ramo Reish Samach Dalet Sif Harav clearly says that if you're mechabed a person to be a moil or a sandik, you cannot retract and take it away from him. The source of this halacha is a Mordechai twice. Mesechet Gittin Shin Samach Gimel, Mesechet Shabbos and Agos Mordechai, Tofai and Beis, Tofai and Gimel. And the Mordechai says, you cannot take that away from him because he was Zoicha. He is the Muchzik and there is Chazaka by mitzvahs. The Mordechai learns this halacha from an interesting source, and that is the sugya of Makirei Kahuna, 3 times in Shas Gittin Lamed Amud Aleph, Bava Basa Kuf Chav Gimel Amud Beis, Chulin Kuf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. And essentially what we have in the Gemara there is, if you are accustomed to give your trumas to a certain kohen, and you always give your meiser to a certain Levi, even before you even gave them those trumas and meisers, those fruits or vegetables, it is as if they were already zoicha. Regarding specific halachas, we won't go into details in the sugya Makira Kohen because it's not really the sugya we are talking about. I'm just mentioning the source from which the Mordechai derives his psak. So just like by Mekira Kena, the mere fact that I always give my trumas to this kohen and to this Levi compels me. It is as if it's taken for granted. It is his entitlement, the same regarding a moyal or a sandik. And I was asked many times, does that mean, Baruch Hashem, Mr. A, Mr. B has a big family, and he has 5 boys, and he was mechabed a moil to do boy number 1, number 2, number 3. Is he mechuyev if he has another 10 boys to take the same moil, or could he decide at any stage, I want to try another moil? And I paskin, you could take another moil, and I will explain why. So there are more paskins the Mordechai, and the fundamental question that we mean to ask is, does the Mordechai mean to say that the fact that I was mechabed this moil in previous brisen, older brothers of the newborn baby, does that mean I am mechuyev to take the same moil again? Or does he refer only to a case in which I already promised the moil, I already took him, and I want to regret and take someone else? And the fundamental question is, from which sugya exactly does the Mordechai learn his halacha? This is actually a chiddush of the Rama Rutenberg. The Mordechai was a Talmud of Rama Rutenberg. Like many of his other great Talmidim, Agos Maimonides, the Rosh. So the Mordechai learns this halacha from Matona Mu'etes, because Toises and Bava Basa Kuf Chav Gimel explains the halacha of Makira Kohuna. Why is it considered as if the kohen was already zoicha? Why? So Toises explains, this halacha is based on another halacha Bava Metzia Memtes, Matona Moetes, also Lachzaboy. If Reuben promised Shimon, I want to give you a gift of $10,000, Reuben could retract and say, I wanted to, but I regret it. It's a lot of money, and I regret. I'm not going to give it to you, and that is okay. The fact that he promised to give him a gift, it's only a gift. He is entitled to say, no, I decided I'm not going to give it. But if it's a Matorah Me'etis, if it's $20, not $10,000, then he must give that gift. He must live up to his promise. He could regret, and he's not liable. You can't call him to Beis Din. It's a gift. But we do expect him to live up to his word. So the Maram Rotenberg says, when we're dealing with Tumas Amaisis, it's not yours anyway. It belongs to the Kohanim. It belongs to the Leviim. All you have is Tovis Hanoah. The only thing you're entitled to is to decide whom are you going to give these Tumas Amaisis, and therefore it's like Matona Mu'etes, So I come back to the Rama Rotenberg regarding the concept of Milah and Sandik, Moel and Sandik. Does he compare them to Matona Mu'etes? And in that case, it is only if I promised, I invited them, and I was mechabed them to be Moel and Sandik. Or does he compare Milah, not to Matona Mu'etes, but to Makirei Kahuna? And if Makirei Kahuna is the source, the fact that I gave them yesterday and the day before yesterday is machayev me, obliges me to give them today. And the same will be regarding Moel and Sandik. The fact that you gave them in previous children means you must be machabed the same people once again. And my psak is no. At any stage, you could decide you want to take another Moel and another Sandik, and I will explain why. The Mordechai, not so much in Gittin, more in Masechet Shabbos, clearly says, Nodar lechaveiroi. He made a promise to his friend, and that is also the Lashon of the Ramo, Kibdoi. And when we check the original Tshuva Maram Rutenberg, which is printed in his Tshuvas, he deals with an interesting situation. Person was mechabed a moil. The moil checked the baby, and he said the baby is too small, too weak, let's wait a month. And then the moil went off to a distant land, Chutz La'aretz, Medina Sayyam. Father of the child assumed he's not going to be back on time, so he was machabed another moil. To his surprise, when the 30 days were over, moil number one is back, and he said, I just came back from Chutz La'aretz, covered your Bris. And then both moilim say, well, we both have the same kibud. Maram Rotenberg says it goes back to moil number one. So the situation he is dealing with is clearly the father was already mechabed the moil. That's the Lashon of the Mordechai, that's the Lashon of Maram Rotenberg, that's the Lashon of the Ramo. Rabbi Kiva Eger on the spot Neresh Samech Dalet does quote Shuvas Marik Simen Ayin Vav. And the Marik clearly says no. The story of the Moel and Sandik is similar to Makirei Kahuna, even though he didn't speak to the Moel at all. And the Moel doesn't even know that he had a baby boy. But because he was machabed this Moel in his first son, second son, he must give it to him again. Shalosh Tshuvas Atzei Chaim. Atzei Chaim was the Siget Harav, the older brother of the Satmar Rebbe, of Rabbi Yoelish, of the Divrei Yoel. He was the father-in-law of my Rebbe, of the Kloisim Rebbe, Zivug Rishon, before the Holocaust. And in his Tshuvas Yoredei Chuftas he argues that even the Marik only deals with a situation in which he was already mechabed him, and he is not right. It is clear in the Marik and in Rabbi Kiva Eger, according to the Marik, the fact that he was mechabed him by previous babies means he needs to be mechabed him once again. But in my opinion, ein halacha kemoisei. The halacha is based on the Ramo, Mordechai, Maram Rotenberg, and they clearly say he was mechabed him this time around. Even more than that, the Bris Yosef quotes this halacha in Bris Yosef, but not in the Shulchan Aruch. And the question is why. Many times I quoted the Chido, Shalosh Tshuvas Yosef Oimet Simachoftes, and the Chido says, how do we deal with this phenomenon? Sometimes the halacha is brought in Bris Yosef, and when you learn the Bris Yosef, it seems to look like this is his psak, and then we do not find it in the Shulchan Aruch. So the Chidur explains there are one of three possibilities. If it's a milta de lo shchicha, if it's not a common happening phenomena, then we assume that is the reason the Beis Yosef didn't quote it in the Shulchan Aruch. The Beis Yosef was clearly interested that the Shulchan Aruch should be as short as possible. An interesting fact that many people don't know, the Shulchan Aruch was printed a few times during the lifetime of the Beis Yosef. And in the second edition, the Alet Chalke Shulchan Aruch is broken down to 30 days. And the Beis Yosef's expectation was that we should go through the entirety of Dalet Chalke Shulchan Aruch every month. Edition number 3. And the Beis Yosef is still alive. We no longer find that breakdown, that 30-day breakdown. I could only guess that people told the Beis Yosef, you are totally unrealistic. People could finish Tehillim once in 30 days, and every Tehillim you'll pick up, you're going to find the breakdown 30 days a month. But do you really expect people to go through the Dalet Chalke Shulchan Aruch once in 30 days? True, it was before the Mogel Avraham and the Taz, the Beis Shimon and the Chalkes Machoikek, the Sma and the Shach, in Choshe Mishpat, but still, Dalet Chalke Shulchan Aruch. You know, the Chazon Ish writes at the end of Chazon Ish Taharos, Ein ze b'metzius b'yameinu sheyeh odam boki b'dalet Chalke Shulchan Aruch al burion. It's not realistic, it's impossible. That's what the Chazon Ish writes. So did the Beis Yosef expect us to go through the Shulchan Aruch every month? Anyway, so the Chidur explains, if it's a milta de lo shchicha, if it's something which is uncommon, that is the reason it's not in the Shulchan Aruch. If it is a milta de shchicha, but if we could derive the same halacha from another sif, then the Beis Yosef didn't want to write it twice. But if we can't learn this halacha from another source, and it is a common phenomena, then the only rationale we have, it's not in the Shulchan Aruch because the Shulchan Aruch was edited and composed after the Beis Yosef, and the Beis Yosef decided that this is not halachic ruling, and he rejects it from halacha. So our situation is definitely a milta de shchicha. We cannot learn it from any other source in the Shulchan Aruch, and therefore we must assume the Mechaber doesn't paskin this halacha. The Ramo does, but the Ramo clearly deals with a situation a person was already Mechaber the moil, Mechaber the sandik, and only then you cannot retract. So halacha l'maaseh, in my opinion, the fact that you were Mechaber the moil, and definitely a sandik in previous simchas means nothing. You are always entitled to take another one. If you were already Mechaber the moil and the sandik, you should not retract. But that is very uncommon. It's very uncommon that a person is Mechaber the moil and a sandik, and then he decides wants to give someone else. I'm not a moil. I was a sandik many, many times. And one time I thought it's happening to me. So let me share this story with you because it's a very happy story. Once people called me on the phone, asked me to be a sandik. I didn't know the people, but I agreed. Why not? It's a big schus. I asked, so where and when will the bris be? Okay, I'm going to be there. A night before the bris, I get a phone call late at night. Shalom, is the Rav coming to our bris tomorrow? And I say, B'ezrat Hashem, I hope so. I am the grandfather of the child. So what goes through your mind when a night before a bris, a grandfather calls you about sandikos? I spontaneously told the person, Kvod HaSaba, if you want to be the sandik, it's totally okay with me, or I have no problem. I'll come there, I'll say the brachas, you could be the sandik. And he says, no. The Rav didn't understand me. I just want to tell you how much it means to us that B'ezrat Hashem, you will be the sandik, and we're so happy about it. And I asked him, so tell me what it's about. He says, our son was a star in yeshiva. Then at some stage, after he got married, he went down and down and down. And we were very distressed. We didn't know what's happening. And then one day he listened to your shiur somewhere on the internet, or Kol HaLashon, I don't know where it was. And he was so moved and so enriched that he listened to another, and another, and another, and one shiur brought the other, and he developed such a Havas Torah. Today he learns 15 hours a day, and he's a Moira Hairoi B'Yisrael, he's a teacher of Torah. And that is why we're so happy that you're going to be the Sandik. I was so moved. So the other day in the morning, I come to the Bris, it's a Safari family, and I'm the Sandik, V'yekora Shemoy B'Yisrael Asher. I was really moved. I'm an Ashkenazi, just as I look. You all know me. But I have a child named after me. So after the Bris, the father comes over to me and he says, I wanted to name him Osher Zelig, like the Rav's name, but for my Bukhari family, that was already too much. That wouldn't fly. So I just gave him one name, just Osher. So I almost thought I'm losing this Sunday course. And at the end of the day, it was beautiful. And it was probably one of the most moving Sunday course I ever had. So anyway, that is my psak. And for many reasons, the truth is that the comparison to Mekira Kohana is a very weak comparison. And therefore, I think the Mordechai, Maram Rotem, I just want to bring a dugma ba'alma. It's not the same as Tumas HaMaises. Tumas HaMaises already belonged to Shevet Kohana. And therefore, even Makira Kohana is enough to give them the schos. But here, the Kohen has no demand. He has no entitlement. He has no right. It's not his. It's totally the father's choice. And a second difference would be Tumas HaMaises are todia. It is steady. So every season you have Tumas HaMaises. Grapes, apples, pears, lemons. Whenever the pears are ready, you're mafresh once and again and again and again, and the same with vegetables. So it's a kvius. So it's reasonable to say, this is your kohen, this is your Levi, but regarding Bris Milah or Sandakos, does a person know when he's going to have the next baby boy? Is it something which is in his power? And it might be a girl, and it might be nobody. And who says your wife will conceive? So how could we compare Trumas HaMaises, which are a kvius, to Sandakos and Milah? But my most powerful argument is, the Ramah is the one that quotes this halacha, and he clearly talks about a moyal and Bal Bris. Same Ramah, Reish Samachay, one similar to Seafood Nalav says, one should not be machabed a sandik twice. You're not supposed to be machabed a sandik twice, and the source of this halacha is the Maril, because Sandakos says it's gura la'ashiris, and by ktoiris, chadoshim liktoiris, we want everybody to have the opportunity to become rich, and not only one or two people. So how could the Ramos say, if I was Mechaber a Sandik once or twice or three times, I need to be Mechaber him again? That is against halacha. You're not supposed to be Mechaber a Sandik twice. And therefore, it is clear to me that this halacha only refers, Lo kedivre Marik verbekiva ega, it only refers to a person that was already mechubed. He was given the opportunity to be Bisandik. You cannot regret and you cannot take it away from him. Another argument is, Rashi, Makira Kona says, Makiroi va'ohavoi. So usually, by Tumas HaMaises, in every town, in every city, there are many Kohanim and many Leviim. So what would be the reason for a person always to give his matanos to one Kohen and one Levi? Must be he's a friend. He's somebody we love, we cherish, we like, we're friends. And that is the reason it would be considered as if I promised him. But by a moyel, in most cases, there aren't that many moyelim like Kohanim and Leviim. And the reason you're mechabed a certain moyel is not because he's your friend necessarily, because he's a Yerei Shamayim. And he has a good reputation. He knows his job. And therefore, it is not based on a personal relationship and personal friendship. And therefore, why would it be considered as a promise? Why would it be considered as matona miyetes? Maybe in days of yore it was different. In the days of Maram Rutenberg and the Mordechai. But in the reality of today, in the vast majority of cases, even if you were Machabed Amoyel once or twice or three times, it doesn't mean it is not seen as any obligation. It's not because we're friends. It's just because he's a good Moyel and Yerei Shamayim. And if I find another that is just as good and just as big at tzaddik, why can't I take that other? So for all these reasons, halacha lamaisa, you could always decide whichever moil you want. And this brings me to a broader discussion about Chazaka in mitzvahs in general, lav dafke Milah. So we started the shiur with Mordechai number 1 and Mordechai number 2, and now we go over to Mordechai number 3 and Mordechai number 4. Mordechai bava basra tov kuf lamed gimel. If a person has a chazaka on Galila, usually it means Hagba. So he buys Hagba every week, he has a chazaka, and you cannot give it to anyone else. And that halacha is quoted, Orechaim kuf nun gimel sif chov beis, that Ramo quotes it in Choshe Mishpat kuf memtes sif lamed dalef. And many ask, the Mordechai contradicts his own words, because Mordechai Megillah Tov Lamed Dalet says about Yayin Lavdola. In most shuls in Europe, in Ashkenazi Europe, they made Kiddush and Avdola in the shul. And then they sold the privilege, the schus, to bring Yayin Lavdola, Ner Lemoyer, Yayin Lavdola. Shabbos we make a Misha Berach for those that donate Ner Lemoyer, Yayin Lavdola. And the Mordechai says, the Kehillah has the right to sell the schus of Yain Lavdola to whoever pays more. So obviously there is no chazaka in mitzvahs. Many achronim deal with this obvious contradiction, and my feeling is it's not a stira at all, and it all depends on the minig of the Kehillah. What I understand from the Mordechai in Bava Basra is the minig regarding Galila was once a year, twice a year. In most shuls it was Simchas Torah. They sold Galila. And the Kehillah decided Galila cost 500 shekel. It wasn't a free-for-all. It wasn't like an auction. A person that takes upon himself 500 shekel, $500, has Galila this year. And the same person, year after year, donated exactly what the Gabom asked for. $500, he got Galila. They cannot decide at some stage, now we want to give it to someone else. No, he has a chazaka. Regarding Yain Avdola, the minig was different. Like in most shuls today, it's not that we say, who is willing to give $500 and it's yours? It's like an auction, and the one that bids the highest price gets it, Zachalai. In my shul, we're very short on cash because almost all the people in my shul are koil guys. So every Shabbos we sell shishi, Hag Begalila, Itzor Vachnos. Yom Tov we sell all the aliyahs. And it's a free-for-all. Every week, every time, new story. And the one that gives the most, he is the one, Zachaloi. So how could there be a Tanis Chazaka? This minute contradicts Chazaka. Every week you got to buy. And you got to pay more than all the others that bid for the same. So it all depends on the minhag. So let's go back to the fundamental question. Is there chazaka by mitzvahs at all? The Mordechai says yes, quoted in Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch Orechaim, Ramocho Shemishpot. Comes along the Trumas Adeshin Simekuf Chov Ches Chelik Beis Psokim. Trumas Adeshin says, chazaka is only if you pay for it. Like the Mordechai Begalila. If you pay, it's like a kinyan, it's like a transaction. Shalas Juvas Maria Levi Chof Aleph says the same. And they're medayik the Lashon of the Mordechai Chazaka Sheyesh Matayna. We're familiar with the concept Chazaka Sheyesh Matayna from Perek Gimel to Bava Basra, Cheskas Abatim. Which means, I'm sitting in the field in the house 3 years, but that is not enough. I must claim that I bought this house, I paid for it, I made a kinyan. Trumas Adeshin says the same regarding Chazaka b'mitzvahs. The Radbaz, different opinion. Shuvas Radbaz, be'elef pei hey. I think it's Chelik Dalet Simin Yud Aleph. Radbaz says this Chazaka b'mitzvahs, whether you pay or not, it does not depend on paying. Gina Zvrodim is of the same opinion. Yoredei Klal Gimel, Siman Zayin. Shalosh Shuvas Botekin said this is the opinion of Roiv Rabbi Seinu. Botekin Chelik Beis, I think it's Yud Zayin. So the Machlokes is Chazaka b'mitzvahs is only if you acquired and paid for something, or even the mere fact, I have this chazaka. So this Simchas Torah, I was asked an interesting question. There's a shul, and a very respected member of the community, a big Talmud Chacham, had Chosen Torah for the past 15 years. The Rav of the Shchuna used to daven in another shul, but he became older, and he has difficulty walking, so for the past few months he came to daven in this shul. Comes Simchas Torah. The Talmud Chacham says, I have a chazaka. For 15 years I'm Chosen Torah. The Gaboim say, but this is the Rav of the town. And he's a major Talmud Chacham and a famous person. How could we have him in shul and not give him Chosen Torah? This would be an embarrassment. But Pliny argues, it's my chazaka. 15 years, I'm the Chosen Torah. So we made a compromise. The one that used to be Chosen Torah will get Chosen Bereshis. Chosen Bereshis, there was no real chazaka. And the others understood the dilemma, and they stepped aside and they say, okay. So the Rav got Chosen Torah, and that other respected member of the community got Chosen Bereshis. V'hakol al mekoymo yovoi b'sholom. So this is a discussion whether there is chazaka b'mitzvahs only when you buy something and you pay for it. Tumas Hadeshen, Radbaz, and many others know chazaka b'mitzvahs is relevant by any mitzvah. However, what is the origin and what is the reasoning, the rationale to chazaka b'mitzvahs? Chuvas Merama Shiur Kufta Zayin says this is based on a Gemara Tanis Daf Chav Ches. I don't have time to go into many details, but what I learned from the Ramban, Chazaka b'mitzvah is only a mitzvah that has kavod and honor, and it is similar to Cheskas Serora. There's a chazaka by Serora, and that is well established in Shulchan Aruch. The origin of this concept is from Malchus Nesius, Rabbonos. Fascinating tshuva in Divrei Chaim. The Divrei Chaim says that by Rebistre, Admurut, there is no chazaka. Because what does it mean to be a Rebbe? What does it mean to be an Admor? Says the Divrei Chaim, the Tzan Zerav, founder of a dynasty. Rabbonos is Sarora, but Rebistre is Avdus. Kol Kulei Avdus, without 1 gram, 1 ounce of Sarora. What does it mean to be a Rebbe? It means you need to feel with every broken heart. You need to give brachas. You need to daven for members of your chutzner, of your group. You need to feel their pain and their suffering and daven for them. That's avdus. That's not sarora. But anyway, there is Yerusha b'sarora and Chazaka b'sarora. And the Radbaz says, mitzvah is like sarora. And it refers to a kibbud in shul, Chosen Torah, Chosen Bereshis, Shishi, Hag, Begalile, Yayin, Lavdola. It is only by mitzvahs that have a certain chashivus in the eyes of people, and they come with kavod, and we learn cheska b'mitzvahs, chazaka b'mitzvahs, from cheska serora. And according to this, it is not by all mitzvahs, but only those that come with a degree of honor, of respect. How does one achieve chazaka b'mitzvahs? Sharet Tshuva Tov Kuf Pei Aleph, and I think it's Siv Cotton Tet, brings from Shilas Yavitz, Chelik Beis Pei Teseb Yankav Emden. Even if he once was Oila, he already has a chazaka. And that is very unreasonable. Doesn't make sense. Once? Somebody's got to be Oila. Somebody got to give the donation, whether it's Yain Avdor or Nelam or. So how do you get a chazaka? Prima Godim, Tov Kuf Pei Aleph Eishel Rom Siv Cotton Fov says 3 times. We do find that 3 times have some significance, but even so, what does it have to do with chazaka b'mitzvahs? Cheskes Gimel Shonam has a totally different reasoning in Perek Cheskes Abatim. The concept of Gimel Pa'omim is by Katlanes, Tinek Shemese Echov Machmes Milah. What does it have to do with chazaka b'mitzvahs? I think it's very reasonable what we find in Mishnah Berurah Kuf Nom Gimel Siman Kuf Beis. It's relative. There is no one fixed rule. If a person is zoich in a mitzvah once again and again, in a fashion, in a manner, which in the eyes of members of the community would be defined as a kvius, and they would assume that he's going to have it again and again, that is when we say, yesh chazaka b'mitzvos. So it depends, lefi hamokum, lefi hazman, lefi inyan, and there is no one fixed rule. So today we had a brief discussion about Chazaka b'mitzvah, starting off with Milah and Sandakores, and then other mitzvahs. And this week we learned Parshas Lech Lecha. The very first Jew was the first wandering Jew. And the very first of Asora Nisyonis says, Lech Lecha, go. And Avram goes, and he doesn't even know where he's going. El ha'oretz asher ar'eka. Rashi writes, Lech lecha lahanaoscha v'latevascha. So obviously Rashi is troubled. What is lecha? And why not simply lech? And that is why lahanaoscha v'latevascha. It's actually a medish, but the Ramban disagrees, and the Ramban says, Lech lecha is loshen hakosov. And it's not something which demands interpretation. In Shir Hashirim Perik Beis, HaGeshem Cholaf Holach Loi. Geshem, rain. Holach Loi. La'na'osei v'la'toivosei. The rain has no hanoi, has no toiva. And the Pasuk says, HaGeshem Cholaf Holach Loi. Eilchu li el hagedoilem. That's a Pasuk in Yirmiyahu Perik Hey. Eilchu li. Kumu v'uvru lochem es nachal azored. Kumu v'ivru lochem. So in so many psukim, this is standard lashon. Comes along Rabbi David Pardo, Sefer Maskala David, and he says, no, the Ramban got it wrong. What Rashi means to say is, the lashon lech is correct when a person goes to a certain destination. When all he is required to do is leaving the place where he is, then we would use the expression tzei. Avram doesn't know where he's going, so it would be appropriate that the Pasuk should say tzei lecha ma'artzecho mimaradetecho umebeis avicho, not lech. When you say lech, you got to point to a destination, and he has no destination. And that is why Rashi writes down Asor Tevascha. But I think that Ramban would still argue, and he would say, it all depends on the essence. So when the point is leaving a place, and it doesn't really matter where you're going, that is when we would say tzei. But when the objective is going somewhere, even though we don't know exactly where that somewhere is, then we would say lech. Avram Avinu is quite confident. It's not just leaving Choron. I am going somewhere. And that's why lech is the appropriate term and not tzei. So Avram Avinu doesn't know where he's going, but he knows he's going somewhere. And he knows that somewhere is a somewhere of promise, of magnificence, of glory. That somewhere is where he and Klal Yisrael need to be. And it is lech lecha, lahana ascha, v'letayvascha. I explained so many times that Asor Nisyonis Nesnas Avram Avinu v'Yamid B'Kulam. These 10 Nisyonis were not for him, it was for us. He is our father, first and foremost of the Avos HaKadoshim. And then Ramban explains at the beginning of Chumash Shemos, Masa Avos Yitzira Labonim, not only Siman Labonim, Yitzira Labonim. Whatever they did, whatever happened to them, determined our future, our history, our past. It's all about us. And those 10 Nisyonis Nesnas Avram Avinu cover all the different realms of the human condition, of human experience, everything that a person might be confronted, every Nisoyan we might need to deal with throughout the ages. They were all part of the Asor Nisyonis. And the very first Nisoyan was Golus. And it is a terrible Nisayan. It's a Nisayan we have experienced in every generation. It is as every Jew hears an echo in his ears. Lech lecha. Goyla achar goyla. Goyla visura. So Kodesh Baruch Hu demands from Avraham, Lech lecho. Me'artzachu me'moladetechu me'beis avicho. Lo izu avzu. Human nature somehow connects. One of the great psychologists coined the term, man is a social being. Ha'adamu yitzur chevroti. It is actually the Gemara in Tanis, thousands of years earlier. Oy chavruta o mituta. Give me friends or give me death. Man is a social being. And man has some inherent loyalty to his country. Millions of people march to their deaths just for their nation. But a man feels even closer to his social circle. And in Lashon HaKosav, that is what it means, moiladetecho. And the closest a man feels to his family. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avraham Avinu, Lech lecho mi'artzecho, leave your country. Not only your country, moiladetecho, your friends, the place you were born, the people you grew up with, your neighbors, your social circle. And not only them, you're also to leave your family, mebeis avicha. And where am I going? He doesn't know. And that is the Nisayan of Klal Yisrael. Goyla achar goyla, one expulsion after the other. Leave. And we didn't even know where we're going. But we went. We were forced to go. But in the depths of our heart, we knew we're going. We're on our way to Yerushalayim. Hundreds of years, thousands of years. But wherever we were expelled, we knew we are on our way to Yerushalayim. A long, twisted, convoluted, tortuous way. What a road. But at the end of the road, we were confident. At the end of the road, there's a beautiful city, and that is Yerushalayim, Ir shechuber lo yachdav. And we also felt in the depth of our hearts, Lech lecho, go, lahana'ascha u'letevascha. At the end of days, it'll be obvious, yes, all the Golas was a mafteach shel geula. We didn't know where we're going. We didn't want to go where we were sent, but we knew at the end of this long, twisted, torturous road, there's a great city, Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, lahana'ascha v'letevascha, to be makabel pnei Moshiach tzidkeinu, b'mehera v'yomeinu amen. So when we start learning Parshas Lech Lecha, Masa Avos Yetzira Labonim, we daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Biglal Avos Toshi Abonim, V'savi Geula Levnei B'neihem, B'mehero V'yomeinu Amen.